In this video, I'm going to show you how to wholesale in 2026. All right, my name is Aldo Chandra. I am the founder of Kaizen Homebuyers. I make over 6 figures last year in just wholesaling bees, and I've been doing real estate for about 8 years now. In this video, when you are starting out at wholesale, I talk to so many different investors, and this is the step-by-step process of how to start wholesaling. Okay, first off, wholesaling is just an exit strategy. It's not specifically for a specific market, but it's acquisitions, right? Is how to find deals. When you're first starting out, the best way to start to find deals is understanding the different type of marketing channels and just choose two. And it depends on the type of marketing channels that you're utilizing, and it is based on both the time and money. So, for example, if you have a lot of time but not a lot of money, you have to do more manual things. So, think about it for dollars. And what is driving for dollars? It's essentially you're driving to your neighborhood, to your close neighborhoods in your backyard, and you're looking for dilapidated properties. What you're going to do is you're going to go to the county site, and then you're going to take a look at who owns this property. They're all public records. And essentially reach out to those owners whether they would like to sell their properties. You could do that, but while you're technically driving for dollars, you could also do what is called door knocking, where you're literally go on to the front of the stoop and then you're knocking on the door and be like, hey, my name is Aldo, and I passed by this house. I'm a local investor in the area, and I'm looking to purchase more properties in the area. Are you looking to sell? So that is one marketing channels that you can utilize. Another marketing channels is cold calling. So cold calling is essentially you call a list, or you go to your drive of dollars and then you have a list of addresses, and then you skip trace them, meaning that you find the property information, number one, and then the owner's contact information, whether that's email or phone. And then you would call them. And obviously with a phone, you could also text them as well. And that's the next marketing channel, which is SMS. Now, granted, there are a lot of compliance and regulations around texting. Luckily, with all of my CRM, the CRM that I have built, we have all of that built in for you with tons of workflows and a ton of parameters to allow you to not get banned from the carriers and things like that. So we take all that into account for you. But that is essentially the two outbound campaigns, right? So you have the cold calling and then you have the SMS, all of those outbound. The issue with outbound is that you require to have a lot of follow-ups, and then you have to consistently follow up on these leads. And also sometimes these leads may be in your CRM for a while, and some of these leads may be a lot. So if it's quantity, but the quality isn't there, then that really depends on so many different variables, right? It depends, number one, on the data itself, if you're pulling lists. Number two is the phone numbers itself. So outside of the data is also the phone numbers, and along with the sales skills and the time of day in which you're calling or contacting that person. So that is one aspect of things. And then to take it even step further, let's say you don't want to do cold calling. You could always hire out an agency, whether that's from the Philippines, whether that's from Egypt. And then there are a lot of agency that can pull data, or you provide them with their data, and then they would call these lists on a daily basis, typically 4 to 8 hours a day, depending on what type of budget that you have. And then afterwards they will call, and then they would push those leads that have said yes, and also many more other specificities that you want for that specific lead for you to call and then close on those deals. Luckily enough, we have the power of AI nowadays in 2026 to pre-qualify some of those sellers for you in order for booking appointments, or also like having conversations to pre-qualify those sellers for you to take a look at. Automize does that as well. Now, that is the outbound campaign. The next type of marketing channels is inbound. They tend to be a little bit more expensive, but you get the motivated sellers, right? So think about PPC, pay-per-click, or we like to call Google ads, meta ads, so Facebook ads as well. And you are essentially spending money to have ads on these platforms to grab sellers' attention or to grab people's attentions and to show that you're buying properties dilapidated. Now, there's pros and cons to this. Obviously, you get more motivated sellers who are doing all in the word, right? So submitting a form, providing all that information to you, and for you to follow up with them and then contact them right away. typically in this type of scenarios, when you are doing these type of inbound marketing, you have to do a lot of speed to lead. And what is speed to lead? So anytime a property or a lead comes in about a certain property, about a seller who's looking to sell their property, you have to essentially call that at that time. Meaning that if I'm a seller, I just submitted this lead, I'm the hottest seller you ever have. So, pun intended. But essentially, once the leads come in, you have to call them right away because they just submitted that form that's fresh on their brain. Like, yes, I'm looking to sell. The caveat to this inbound marketing is sometimes that the sellers may submit it to multiple different type of forms, multiple different type of companies. And then now it comes down to your sales skills, right? So if you're able to build rapport to that seller, you're able to negotiate and then lock it up before anybody else, or maybe have like the best offer, for example, assuming that you run your numbers right. So all of those channels work. Another inbound marketing channels is direct mail, which can be expenses upfront, but most investors that I talk to have a lot of good returns on these direct mails. Now, what is direct mail? Direct mail is essentially you or a company. You pull this and then you essentially mail either a postcard or a check or any type of creative ways to these owners' addresses. So sometimes if it's absentee, right? So meaning that they don't live in that property, you're sending them to the owner's mailing address to see if they're looking to sell their property, depending on the data. Now, again, similar to the outbound, the data plays a huge role. So if you have your own data, just make sure it is the right people, the right motivations too. And depending on the motivations as well, you got to do it more frequent. What I mean by that is when you are, for example, doing foreclosure lists, right? There is more time that you need to reach out to them, meaning that when I mean more time, more urgency, right? So because a foreclosure can happen, an auction can happen at a given time. Now, when you're reaching out to these sellers and they're going through this distress situations, whether that's tax delinquent or mortgage delinquent, you have to continually follow up and then have more frequency in terms of sending out those direct mail or maybe in the contact, whether that's cold calling or text messaging, right? So you have all of those marketing channels at your disposal. The best way to get started is just choose two. Usually it's a good, depending on your budget and your time, I like to do outbound and inbound. So just choose one of the outbound, whether that's cold calling or to SMS. And then also doing the inbound, which is maybe direct mail or PPC or Facebook ads. So then you have a combination of both. If you're just starting out, I would suggest doing more quantity than quality. So you put those reps in. You're consistently having conversations with the sellers. You're consistently putting the repetition to ask the right questions, to build rapport, to negotiate, to submit offers. And then once you get better and a lot more better because of the repetitions, now you're able to have conversation when there's actually a quality lead that comes in, meaning that, hey, I am a motivated seller. I just submitted a form. It's hot. Yeah, speak to lead. Now you're able to contact those particular sellers and you're in your A game. You already talked to 1,000 of these not really good leads per se, or lead that needs to be followed. Now you're ready to close on the deal. Now, typically after you've done all the legwork of lead generation, now it comes to sales. Now, granted, any acquisitions on marketing, so you can do direct seller marketing, and also a lot of sales skills, right? So when you're on the phone, you have to build rapport, and then you have to provide solutions depending on the conversations. In my business, we do like a forced process in terms of the solution that we provide to the sellers. Number one is we submit a lowball offer as if that we are going to close on the deal. And what's the benefit of that is obviously on the timing aspect, with close whenever you want, we'll pull or we'll raise capital for it or use our own funding. But the pricing is not favorable, but depending on the motivations and how quick they want to sell, then we could negotiate on those terms. Now, let's say if that doesn't work. Now we're doing a wholesale, which is a slightly more price point that we are selling it to other investors, assuming that the numbers work for them as well. And then afterwards, we'll do novations and then listing if the property is in really, really great conditions and the seller wants the highest top dollar for it that we either refer to agents or that we listed ourselves. And that's typically in the conversations. Also, note, 15 minutes plus when you're having these conversations is a good benchmark for when you're doing that initial call or that discovery call, meaning that you're asking them 4 pillars, meaning 5. So price, conditions, timeline, and motivations, and maybe occupancy as well to put that on there. So you're asking all of those questions. Now, after you go to discovery phase, maybe you could submit an offer right there and then, assuming that you're having that conversation, 15-minute conversation, right? And at minimum, you're looking at the deal, you're looking at comps, right? We also, in Automize, we also partner up with Brick AI, so you could comp within a span of seconds as well, and then look up the properties that have been sold in the general area. And then afterwards, you're able to send contract, or you're going to an appointment. When you're going on appointments, there are a lot of benefits to doing so. You negotiate better with terms and pricing. You're able to meet with the seller, and you're able to see all the things within the house. Most of the time when you're doing these virtual wholesaling, the sellers does not show the basement, or that they don't show all the ugly things within the house. They only show you what they can see, or maybe what's nice. So now you are kind of limited to all the knowledge within the house in terms of the conditions. Typically in the conditions, you can negotiate better that way. But then when you're in person, you see everything, the basements, every corner to corner, everything that's wrong with the house. So you have a better negotiation point that way. Now, after you have that conversation, you build rapport. Let's say you accepted an offer and the seller accepted your offer. You sent out a contract. Cool. Now you have this deal, and then you have a lot of exit strategy that you can utilize. Number one, you can wholesale the property, right? Depending on the terms and the price point that is negotiated upon. You have a lot of extra strategies such as wholesaling, novations. You could even do a flip yourself, or maybe partner up with other people. Everything is at your disposal. You could dispo the property, and dispo is a full different process. When you're doing dispo, you have to do the same outreach and effort as you are doing the acquisitions, because the dispo, you're reaching out to buyers, right? And sometimes the more experienced buyers tends to be more cheap, meaning that their price point is much lower because they went through that experience. Maybe a newer investor would pay a little bit more. So just be wary, and then you have to have consistent conversations, even with the different marketing channels, right? Maybe cold calling it, maybe more outbound, and then the inbound you could post on Investor Lift. You can also post on alpha.com or any other forms. So you tap inbound leads that are coming in, along with multiple different Facebook groups to do an outreach. There are a lot of Facebook groups online. Post your deal there, have more conversations. Again, this is the two side, right? Acquisition and dispositions. Now, once you find a seller that is willing to sell, you have a buyer that's willing to buy that contract or that property. Now you got to do transaction coordination. And what is that? It's essentially making sure that the deal closes. It's a whole different ballgame. It's one thing that you have acquisitions. It's another thing you have disposition. It's another thing to close on a deal. It's super, super important, because when you are running your title, for example, what are the issues that arise? What is the timeline looks like to get these resolved? You have to consistently follow up with both the seller and the buyer to get all the information that you need, along with the title company as well. Most title company put priority based on closing dates. And most of the time, they won't go into your file until, number one, the title report comes, and then number two, when it gets close to the closing date. And most of the time, too, all of the issues rise up when it comes to the final hour. Just be careful and understand and consistently follow up with the title company to make sure that the buyer and the seller have everything that they need in order to close, and the title company as well from the documents. So once you get to closing, the clear to close, that's when you close on that deal, and then that's how you make money. All right. So overall, it's a very lengthy process, but you can make a ton of money for it. And the most important thing is to find the deals itself. I know that there's a lot of advice saying that, hey, you should reach out to buyers, you should build rapport, get your buyers list. I think that's BS. I think the most important thing is doing the work. And then once the deal comes, a lot more conversations you will have with buyers to talk about a certain deal, and they know that you're a serious wholesaler, for example. So without further ado, if you are looking to buy your next property, if you're looking to sell your home, let me know. And also, if you're looking for a CRM to essentially do majority of the work for you, like 70 to 75% of it, I have the link to Automate CRM below. Schedule your demo call. I'll show you how we use AI to essentially pre-qualify sellers and book appointments for us. So all we focus on is talking to specific sellers who are already pre-qualified and close on more deals. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, if you enjoy what I talked about today, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.